Thank you.
Now, who knows the election participations usually at a national election in Europe?
Sorry.
Anyone? I think the average is around 50%.
Or less.
Or less. And usually the unhappy people are voting, which are the extreme. And when we ask ourselves, in today's world, while every industry is digitized, travel, retail, we have fintech, we have everything, mobility. The one and only, which is probably the biggest benefiter of digital, are actually politics, because politics is nothing else than consensus finding. And Scytl, a company from Barcelona, is actually the one who could save the world. Now, Onno, please explain a little bit about the company, the background, and what you offer, and then we talk about why we are stuck.
Okay, good. Thank you for the introduction, Marco. Thank you for being here. Thank you for attending. So what is Scytl? Scytl is a software company. Okay? We are headquartered in Barcelona, and we lead the digital transformation and innovation of elections worldwide. Okay? So we were we were founded in 2001 as a spin-off from a research university group. And currently we're the leader in secure electronic voting worldwide. Okay? So
let me translate this long introduction.
Yeah.
Scytl enables you to vote online or through your telephone in a secure, it's certified and regulated, because you're also conducting the technical side of many kind of offline election processes.
Correct.
Now, why are we still on a Sunday, especially in Germany, go to the elections physically? In Kenya, you often get killed when you vote for the wrong party. What is going on? I was with your CEO in Brussels, and I met Mr. Oettinger. He said, wow, amazing, we should do this right now. Then he changed jobs, as politicians do, by default, and it never came to life. Why is it that we are still not voting with a mobile phone when there is a secure way? We are finding our wives online through the dating sites. We are wiring money. Why is it that the political system is so reluctant to adopt this important change?
Yeah, this is a very good question, Marco. Thank you for this one. So, if you go back 150 years ago, they tried to actually do attempts, and they managed to introduce postal voting. Okay? Now that was quite a revolution. Making changes to any kind of electoral process requires changes in legislation, and changing regulations is actually a challenge for politicians, especially when it comes to democracy. Okay? So it's not something that you would typically do from one day to the other. Okay? It requires time. Online voting is actually the way how we can experience democracy, making democracy more participatory and inclusive, as you just mentioned. However, it doesn't happen all around the world yet. Okay? There are a few countries that do it, such as, for example, Switzerland, such as, for example,
so Switzerland,
Canada.
I live in Switzerland.
You live in Switzerland? Yeah.
But you're doing the national election there, or more like canton by canton?
In Switzerland has been doing pilots since early 2000. There were a few cantons involved, some started, some stopped, etc. Currently, Switzerland is adapting its legislative framework, okay, so they are far ahead of other countries, to actually, with the final objective, to make online voting a third formal channel to participate with elections, okay? And then it depends on the cantons whether they would implement it or not, okay?
And when will they start in Switzerland?
Oh, they already started. They already started, yes. They already started. Switzerland is a good example because transparency is key. In Switzerland, what we did together with our partner, Swiss Post, we worked together with the Federal Chancellery, and we went through a public intrusion test. We published the source code, we made it available online with the objective that actually people could look at it and being very transparent. And as a result, we're now looking at the result of this exercise to continue, look at potential things that people reported, and then to be back online for the federal elections. Yeah.
So that's Switzerland. And the European Union, I mean, in this country, we seem to be stuck. The big coalition seems to potentially not really make it. There's a lot of issues in other countries where right-wing parties win. I mean, the impact of being able to vote, let's call it frictionless, through a click of a button on your phone, which is authenticated with the fingerprint or the eyes, would solve probably the issue of radicalization in the Western world, because eventually everyone could vote. There are also countries where it's mandatory to vote. I mean, what to vote is a different story. We're not addressing this. But alone, I think the ease of vote will probably encourage a lot of people to become politicians, because there's more engagement. So is it right to assume that you would see a de-radicalization of the party scene if you enable everyone to vote frictionless? The lazy mass usually doesn't move from the sofa because they say it doesn't really matter, it doesn't change anything for me.
Okay, what you will see when you introduce online voting, you will see an increase in participation. Okay? It will go gradually. Currently, for example, there's as you just mentioned, there's a huge generation of people who may have less interested in politics. There's another generation, the youngsters, who haven't ever sent a letter by mail, who haven't even been to a postal office. They don't know what it is. So yes, when you introduce electronic voting by mobiles or by devices or by whatever kind of technology and make it online available, you will see an increase of participation. If that in turn changes the political landscape, that remains to be seen. But you will have more participation. Yeah.
So in a traditional election process, let's say it's 50%, I think in the US it was just 40. Is this equal by demographic, by age group, or do the younger generations vote even less than the older ones?
This depends. This is country per country, election per election. There's no straightforward answer to that question. If you look at online voting in general, you would be surprised to see that not only, for example, the younger voters pick it up quite fast and vote online, but also the older generation actually is quite familiarized nowadays with using their mobile phones. They make their travel, their flight reservations online, they do banking online. And when you give them a phone so that they can actually vote online, they manage and they're able to do that as well.
And in emerging markets, mobile voting would also be safe voting. I think the last national election in Kenya, there were, according to Human Rights Watch, and we're partnered with Human Rights Watch, we did a dinner with them in London. They told us that 78 people got killed in the election process because they voted for the right party. Yeah. And that did get them in trouble badly. Isn't there a need that the United Nations or whoever is basically bringing your technology to these countries that there can be safe democracy?
If you use online voting either from polling stations or in this case better by using mobile devices and so forth, yes, in these countries voting would be more safe because you don't have to go physically to polling station. You can do it from home. But there are already countries, for example, like India, who have experience with online voting.
Which country?
India.
India?
Yeah, India. Which is.
And what is the participation then?
I can't remember exactly, but the participation was not different than from, as far as I remember, from the traditional paper system.
If your business would be owned by Al Gore or Kofi Annan, would that have an impact on your success to convince politicians to change the legislation and allow for mobile voting?
They would definitely help pushing governments to start introducing or to start further looking into online voting. Yeah. There's a lot of
Estonia, they do it also, I think.
Estonia, they do it in Switzerland, they do it in Canada.
All the small, innovative countries with not so much legacy, I guess.
Well, Switzerland is not a small country for me. Canada is also not a small country. India is not a small country. Australia is not a small country. So there are quite a number of countries.
So it's a European problem
then? Europe, parts of Europe, not all Europe, but parts of Europe currently have legislation which is not compatible with introducing electronic voting, online voting.
It's not that I'm lazy, by the way. I'm happy to go for a walk and make my cross, but I think what we really need is full participation.
Yeah.
And I think politicians need to send a sign that they embrace new technologies and are on the forefront and not lagging 20 years behind. Onno.
Sorry, just to answer that final question. Some politicians in some countries are actually looking at each other, and not always countries willing to take the first step. So that doesn't help, but eventually it will come. Technology exists, it's secure, it has been proven, it has been used. And I think we will first see it for specific target groups, such as voters with disabilities, voters who cannot make it to the election on election day,
and abroad voters.
Voters abroad, etc. And then gradually you will see it introduced in other elections as well.
Well, Onno, thank you so much and good luck.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco.
Go on your mission.
Okay, thank you.
And bring mobile voting to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.